Hi, in this module we're going to be looking at Logic's mixer window, and we're going to do this by looking at just one channel strip. It's quite confusing when you've got a whole window full of channel strips, but actually if you look at them closely you'll see that they're all pretty much identical and they all do the same thing. So if you learn one, you've learnt them all. They all do the same thing. If you can't see the mixer window, it's possibly because you've got this pulled down, but if you click on the mixer button there at the bottom of the arrange window, the mixer will open up. Make it as big as you can make it so you can see the whole channel strip. Another way of doing it is to go to the window menu and choose, rather confusingly, environment. But that brings up a couple of extra things that we'll save for the advanced lessons. So let's just stick for now with the mixer at the bottom of Logic's main arrange page. As you can see, I've got my guitar channel strip associated with this guitar track. If I click on this electric piano software instrument track, the electric piano channel strip becomes highlighted in the mixer. There's two others to look at. First of all, the output. We'll talk about that in a minute. And finally, the master, which we will save for an advanced lesson. Let's go back to the guitar channel strip and just look at this on its own for the moment. Okay, it has a name, guitar 1. The 1 associates it with track 1. And as we've discovered before, if I double click and change the name of this and call it guitar, the name in the mixer changes as well. And I've got my guitar playing on channel 1, track 1. At the bottom of the channel strip there are these 4 buttons. The one marked M is for mute. If I click it, it mutes that track, in this case the guitar. The S stands for solo. If I click it, it solos that track. It mutes everything else and plays only that track. That's a quick way. If I just wanted to listen to that track, I don't want to have to go through and physically mute every other channel in the mixer window, but by clicking solo, it mutes all the other channels temporarily until I unclick it. The input button we'll talk about in an advanced lesson. Suffice for the moment to say that that listens to what's coming into the channel even if it's not in record. The R button puts the channel into record and tells it to be ready to record when I hit the record button on the spacebar or the record key on the keypad. Hitting the R button when it's flashing like that does not mean that you are recording. It simply means you have prepared the channel to record. It is in what's called record ready. So I would hit record ready and then make sure that my guitar is plugged in and I've got a signal coming in. Okay. We should think about the route that the sound takes through this channel strip. It comes in here. This is in the input-output section, and we see a button that if you click and hold on it, lists either no input or all of the inputs that you have available on your system, or a bus. We'll deal with the buses later. First of all, let's talk about the inputs. I have 18 inputs on my system, and you can see they're all listed there. If I go to the Logic Pro menu, Preferences, Audio, and set in the Audio menu, Devices, Input and Output device to the built-in input, and then click Apply Changes. Now when I come back to this, I will see that I've only got 2 inputs available. The rest have been greyed out, which tells me they are no longer available. But I've got inputs 1 and 2. So I'm going to set that back to show all of the inputs that I have on this system. Hit apply changes. There we are. I can select from any of my 18 inputs. So the sound comes in according to the input that you have selected when you are recording. If you are playing back and not recording, it simply plays back whatever's on that track in the arrange window. The sound then goes up here through this series of buttons. We'll look at those in a minute. Once it's passed through these, it goes to the volume fader and the pan pot, and then it gets sent to the outputs. And here again, if I click and hold, I get a list of either no output or all of the outputs that I have on my system. In my system, I have 18 outputs, and I can select which of the outputs to send it to. I'm going to go back to the audio preferences, logic, preferences, audio, and set that back to the built-in output and set the input to the built-in input. Hit apply changes, and you'll see now I only have the single stereo output available to me. So take a moment to get familiar with your system. Go and look in Logic Pro, Preferences, Audio, Devices, and see what inputs and output devices are available to you, because they're the ones that will show up here. The next thing to look at is this channel strip. It's called Output. And you'll see that we don't have any input or output settings on it. It is fixed. It is sent to the stereo output. End of story. You can't change it. All of the other channel strips in the mixer whose outputs are set to stereo out get sent to this channel strip. It's kind of like a mixer tap in a kitchen. If you've got hot water coming in here and cold water coming in here, this is the tap where they're both mixed together and all the water comes out of. I can have less hot water or less cold water. I can change the mix of these two kinds of water, but this is the master, the mixed output of it all. This is also the channel that you use for bouncing. Again, we'll talk about that more in a separate lesson. Okay, the next thing to look at are these insert blocks. And if I go back to my guitar channel, you'll see that there are insert blocks on all of these channel strips, and they are for inserting things into the sound path. So on an audio track, I can insert things like guitar amps, delay units, distortion, dynamics, that's compression, noise gates, EQ, and other more advanced and specialized effects. It's important to understand that what you put here changes the sound. So if I put, let's put an EQ, a simple EQ across this guitar channel. If I solo it and play it, if I now EQ it in such a way to take out all of the bass end and maybe just boost a little mid, I've changed the sound. I can bypass these if I double click on it to look at it, there's a bypass button. They all have the same button. And I can bypass it. I can then put a whole succession of plugins. Let's say a delay plugin, a compressor right after it. Okay, so the insert points allow you to insert effects into the channel strip. Notice that if I use up the 2, another one appears, and it'll keep adding insert points until the system runs out. The same insert points appear on a software instrument track. So far we've been talking about an audio track. Let's go over to our electric piano track, solo it. We can put the same kind of effects on. We can put an EQ into the insert points. That's so I've put an EQ on it. I might then want to put it through just a gentle amp, just something not too artificial, but something like this. A software instrument track, however, has a different set of choices in the input section. If I click on this input section here, I don't get my list of audio inputs. If I click on the input box on an audio track, I've got all my audio inputs. But on here, on a software instrument track, I get a list of all the software instruments that I have in my system. For example, I could choose one of these synthesizers. I'm going to bypass the amp for the minute, and I'm going to bypass the EQ. So go back to the input output. I could choose, let's try that, tone wheel organ. Okay, so that's the insert points on audio and software instrument tracks. Next unit we're going to be looking at sends, because they do something very different.